what we're going to watch unfold, because I think there's no question that, autonomous weapons will be used and AI will be used in warfare. It's going to happen. So I think what we're going to watch unfold, and the big questions people need to be asking themselves at a leadership level, are how are they going to be used? Because, I think you and I have talked about before how in intelligence, you can't really replace the human, right? You can have all the technical intelligence collection capabilities in the world, but you can never replace the human intelligence collector. You can never replace human, right? Human intelligence itself. It's so valuable. You can't get it any other way. And in warfare, it's going to be the same thing. You can never remove the human component. And I think you will never be able to really remove the boots on the ground component of warfare either, because
and I would say that what we're saying here, and maybe this is just me saying it, maybe it's not you saying it, but what you can do is you can reduce the redundancy of it, because World War II, the reason you had so many soldiers was really for redundancy. Yeah. Because you knew that there was a certain amount of those soldiers that were going to be killed in action, and the only way that you were going to have enough of a combat force moving forward was to have redundancy. And in the human world that we come from, the human intelligence world that we come from, the reason you have so many case officers, so many human intelligence collectors, is really for redundancy. Because in order to meet your threshold of required intelligence, you need to have a lot of people doing the work. As you bring in technology, as you bring in advanced weaponry, as you bring in, new forms of technical intelligence collection, what you can do is you can maintain a high level of confidence in what you collect with fewer redundancies. And that's really interesting, and I think it's really encouraging, because the fewer redundancies you put out in the field, as like when you're talking about human lives, the fewer human lives you put out in the field, the fewer human lives you risk losing. So we saw it with the global war on terror. Fewer soldiers equipped with higher tech resulted in fewer deaths. 20 years, we lost 7,000 people. I know that's every one of those lives is a real life, but that's not like any ratio of life lost that we've seen in any other conflict in American history. Remember the Civil War?
Yeah.
The Civil War I think it lost 600,000 people. Is that right?
Thousands of people. It's amazing considering what the population actually was back then. Yeah.
And that was short. That conflict was short in terms of what we're talking about in total years spent in conflict, right? So technology reduces the need for redundant lives, and the reduction in redundant lives results in less casualties. But it also makes it so that the lives that are engaged are really, really valuable, highly trained, highly sophisticated career professionals. That's why the U.S. military is full of military professionals, whereas the militaries that you see in China and Russia, larger scale militaries, they're not nearly as professionalized as we are.
Right. Or countries that, have mandatory military service for the first year or two, right? So, I just had the thought, when you were talking, one of the pros that people say for using machines in warfare to replace soldiers is, less loss of life. But if weapons are meant to be in part, there's offensive and defensive, and if weapons are meant to be in part a deterrent against war, what is the deterrent to moving to warfare where less lives are lost? Because then governments are like, you know what? Less lives are lost. Like it's a cleaner war. So then
the dark part of my brain, like the dark part of my mind. Yeah. Look at you. I can see you laughing at that concept already.
Yeah, because I already know. That part.
If I were to sit on a presidential cabinet in a time of war where we have automated soldiers, you don't kill equipment. You don't destroy equipment. You go for the heart. You go to stab people in their most vulnerable areas. So if two armies are fighting on a battlefield with a bunch of robots and drones, that's not where they're the most vulnerable. Where they're the most vulnerable is where there are human lives. So what you're going to find is potentially more atrocities acted out to deter the enemy from continuing the battle. Very similar to what we did with the Japanese in World War II.
Right.
We could have continued to fight in the field for years against the Japanese, but instead we took a nuclear weapon to the centers of industry, which were also the centers of population,
right,
to immediately deter them from continuing the conflict.
Right.
That would be my bigger concern. All the robotic soldiers, all the automated weapons, all the tanks that drive themselves, all the cruise missiles that self-direct, all of that stuff and more can be created and can be engaged in conflict. But when a country really wants to win a war, it's not going to do it through a war of attrition of technology. It's going to cut to the chase. It's going to strike at the heart of its enemy. And that will always be human lives. If you like this short clip, make sure you click here to see the next clip or here to see the full podcast episode.
Freedom! So fresh, so new.